Madam Ambassador, another question is what care should be on the table when a 12-year-old child in this country, assigned female at birth, says, actually, I feel more comfortable living as a boy. What should the law allow the response to be?
Well, I think the law should stay out of it, and I think parents should handle it.
Madam Ambassador, another question is what care should be on the table when a 12-year-old child in this country, assigned female at birth, says, actually, I feel more comfortable living as a boy. What should the law allow the response to be?
Well, I think the law should stay out of it, and I think parents should handle it.
Madam Ambassador, another question is what care should be on the table when a 12-year-old child in this country, assigned female at birth, says, actually, I feel more comfortable living as a boy. What should the law allow the response to be?
Well, I think the law should stay out of it, and I think parents should handle it.
I think 3 times of that was enough. But, welcome, everybody, to the promised midweek Rescue Michigan catch-up stream, because we had a lot to talk about on one topic this past Sunday, and we've got some other topics we need to cover. Welcome back to the program, Shane. Good to see you, buddy.
Happy to be here. Good to be back.
So, isn't it great that we're not watching the Republican debate that's happening right at this very moment? I mean, we could.
Well, as a matter of fact, until like 4 minutes ago when you told me about it, I had no idea it was going on. So I was blissfully unaware of the whole debate proceeding. I don't think I've watched 1 second of any of these debates this time around. I may have caught some clips, like I caught the clips of Vivek demolishing Ron Romney McDaniel and trashing Nikki Haley after the fact. But watching it live, I have skipped it, and I don't think I missed anything.
We will have to stay tuned for the clips because there might be some good moments. We're down to 4 now. It's just Vivek and DeSantis, and then the neocon bimbo and the lard bucket. So there's only 4 left. So that's a lot more time for Nikki Haley, which is a lot more time for enjoying nails scraping across a chalkboard. You know, people have been talking a lot in the media about Nikki Haley's unbelievable ascension, and she's rocketing to fame, and look at how her numbers in the polls are improving. It's like, no, folks, come on, get real. Her numbers are coming up because the others are dropping out, and the anti-Trump vote is just coalesced around her. That's all there is to it. There's nothing more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, she may have gotten a few point windfall from, after, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but Republicans becoming more neocon again after the attacks against Israel. That might have given her a little shot in the arm. But I think, it's mostly people seeing DeSantis's campaign fizzle and thinking that, okay, well, she's the most viable non-Trump option. But, I haven't seen a poll with her above, 11, 12%. So it's not like there's a huge market for her out there. I mean, she's not a leader who, really appeals to anyone out there except for that small minority of former, Bush acolyte style Republican.
Liz Cheney supporters, basically. I mean, maybe some old country club Republicans who still believe the legacy media because they've just been not paying attention for the past couple of decades, but that's about it, really. I'm not particularly worried about her I'm not worried about her in the slightest in the primaries, really. But it's she is, and as we just saw in that clip, consistently abusing the messaging. Like in that case, parental rights. So this is like all the you see the people contorting the America First message. Yeah, it's actually America First to support Ukraine. It's actually America First to support foreign aid to Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan. It's an America First policy. Yeah. Well, it's a parental rights thing. It's good that parents should be allowed to sexually mutilate their kids if their kids so choose, right? Isn't that what you guys want? I mean, that's
and it's kind of like they've taken the principles of libertarianism, of parental autonomy, and turn it on its head. I mean, if a parent wants to starve their children or hurt them in any way, or beat them in a way that isn't just typical spanking if they did something wrong, beat them half to death, whatever, those sort of things, they're not permitted to do those things to their child just because they're their child. So why should they be allowed to drug their children, chemically castrate them, mutilate their genitals, and indoctrinate them, groom them with this propaganda? No, it should not be allowed. There shouldn't be many laws on the books, but that should be one of them, is banning the child transitioning in all of its forms.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways that the libertarian movement got sidetracked. I think one of the biggest ways that it faltered was right from the get-go. There was a lot of libertarians who were pro-abortion, including the two most influential ones, Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard. And their attitude was, well, the child has a right to live, but not to the mother's resources in the womb. And it's like, wait, what? And anyone who's pro-life would be like, that's crazy. That's like allowing a woman to let her kids starve to death because she has no responsibility to raise them. And that being the libertarian argument, and at least a prominent part of it, I mean, I think that devastated the libertarian movement. It, to this day, gives me pause when people ask me, are you a libertarian? I'm like, I don't want you to think I'm that kind of libertarian, So,
well, that was a good thing about Ron Paul, was that he kind of
took
a strong pro-life position. And I think that kind of muted a lot of the pro-abortion sort of libertarians. I know when I was in the Libertarian Party before Ron Paul showed up, generally libertarians were more pro-choice or pro-abortion, but Ron Paul kind of drove that away a little bit to where now at least there's a debate. But yeah, I've read, I think Walter Block wrote some stuff on evictionism or something. And it's like, I get what you're trying to do.
That theory too.
Yeah, I get what
they did a term for it. They called it evictionism. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, evictionism, where you can basically eject the fetus out of your body because of, some weird argument for female bodily autonomy. And I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to promote, a pro-freedom, anti-state ideology to its, logical endpoint. But I think, once you get so you are so ideological that you kind of abandon reason and you abandon morality, that's when you've gone too far.
Yeah. I'd probably draw the line at killing babies. Probably that's going too far. Yes. But anyway, we got some kind of catching up to do, man. I was out of town for a couple weeks. Haven't seen you in a while. The legislature adjourned. We have done a few programs talking about some of the new things going on in Lansing. There is now also a lot of big things happening in Washington. They have, I want to say until the 15th, but that might be wrong. It might be the 18th, that Congress is still in session, and there is a mad rush for some of the things they're trying to get done before the end of the year, some very bad things. But before we get to Washington, I want to share with you guys some of the new tools that we now have at rescuemichigan.com, which we are always working on improving. We've been talking for a while about, giving folks more intellectual ammunition to go after a lot of these politicians. So under Operation Watchdog, there are some new links we have now. There's a new Public Act scorecard. I'll come back to that in one moment. And there's also this new tab called Recent Laws. Some of you may have seen this, by the way. Jocelyn Benson is signing the vote fraud laws that the Democrats passed. There's some PR about that. People have been asking me, how come Jocelyn Benson is acting as the governor? Well, according to the Constitution, if the governor is out of the state, line of succession kicks in. If the lieutenant governor is out of the state, the next in line is the Secretary of State. So that's how they are doing that. By the way, Betty Nelson says, Facebook said live not available and kicked me. I went to your site to get this live. That's weird because it's your comments is coming from Facebook, Betty. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but these things are good to know. Of course, we are also live on Rumble, where it's me against I, says babies' lives matter. And Rumble is always going to be our best archive of our videos, is our Rumble channel. And by the way, on our show on Sunday, I actually told people, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, because we're almost at the milestone of 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Unbeknownst to me, we are actually at 956 followers on Rumble. So check us out on Rumble, guys, and hit that subscribe button, or I guess it's on Rumble, it's a follow button. Let's get to the 1,000 milestone there as well. Jay says, I'm on Facebook and it shows 2 viewers. Yeah, well, Facebook is doing something wrong. I should say
an exclusive fraternity of Rescue Michigan listeners.
Yeah, well, we didn't announce the show in advance on emails or anything, but we will talk about it tomorrow, because we were just like tonight. I just finished putting these tools up. So I'll show you guys what these tools are. We'll do an email announcement about it, along with link to the stream to the people who weren't tuning in live. I can't imagine, but maybe some people are watching the debate instead. I don't know. But here we go. So there's this recent laws section, which is a table of all of the laws that they have passed this year. This is it's as of when the legislature's website was last updated, which was yesterday. And you can click on any of these to go to the bill numbers, which have all the things, the roll call votes, the official text and analysis. You can see a lot of Republican amendments on this one. And who the sponsors are, all those things are right there. And we have those for all of the bills signed into law. So in case you're wondering what is and is not yet on the books, the only caveat I have is that I don't know that the legislature's website is entirely up to date. So it might not be perfect because I don't see any recent election laws listed here. So maybe those will come in tomorrow or in a few days. But now that we have the laws posted, at least up to what was, there's a bunch of them were signed on like the 22nd of November, and there's a couple that were more recent. But we have a new scorecard. The old one is still there, although it still needs to be updated. But I thought, and this was actually a lawmaker asked me about doing this, a scorecard based upon the bills that actually became law. And that was based on all of the, or not quite all of them. Some of the bills that were signed into law were like zeros in importance, so we didn't quite score every single one. But you can choose any lawmaker. They're sorted alphabetically. You even get a preview of what their score is and click on whoever and click to view the scorecard. I'll have to add some kind of introduction copy there at some point. But for each of the PAs, it will list off how they voted and what score we gave them. And how did we come up with these scores? I made them up. Feel free to email me and tell me I got something wrong or something should have been scored more severely or more lightly. But I did my best, you know. I didn't give anything more than a 90 because I always hesitate to give something a 100 score because that's saying that there's nothing that could possibly be more important. So I kind of went 90 is the most important. I think 10s, well, the zeros are the least important. Some of these are just not even listed because I thought there was one that's like name a road. I'm not going to score those. And some of these are things that like bother me personally, like these 3 bills to impose licensure on hunting and fishing guides. This was a fight that Representative Riley was involved in when I was in his office. So this pisses me off, but it's also a minor occupational licensing thing in the scheme of things. So I only gave it a 10. Some of these were tough to score just because of how many duplicates there were. Like there's 1 billion abortion bills in this. And the problem with the abortion bills is that all the Republicans vote no, all the Democrats vote yes. So it's not giving a good distinction. But nonetheless, I thought, let's give it a high score. So I did. And if you look at when you see minuses, that means that the lawmaker did the wrong thing. And I was surprised by some of the scores that some of these lawmakers got. Just to talk about a few of these issues. And Shane, by the way, feel free to jump in on any of these. Because some of these were things that I think people probably didn't quite understand when they were voting on them. Wouldn't surprise me. Like a lot of people got this one wrong. House Bill 44 says faces to be blurred in court video proceedings. And I have no doubt the way this was pitched to the lawmakers was, yeah, well, the victims of sexual assault should be protected. But that sounds great. But remember, until they're found guilty, they are only accused. And the people who are the victims are the accusers too. And what this is really partly about is diminishing the right of the accused to face the accuser, you know? So again, I didn't give it a huge score, but a lot of otherwise good lawmakers did the wrong thing on this one. Here's another one here. A lot of them did the wrong thing on this. Allow law enforcement agencies to give victims' information to survivor programs without the victim's consent. So here, we'll just put you in touch with these people, whether you want to or not. And this was another one of those bills where you had to really read the fine print. So anyway, I'm not going to go through all these one by one, but feel free to go through these. I feel like I scored this one too low, but you guys can tell me in the comments. Right to Work got a very high score. Some of these we've talked about in the show before. Some of these we haven't. A couple of bills that I actually left out of the scoring because they are controversial, even within, I think, free market people, were the repeal of the A to F and the 3rd grade reading law. And those, I think, on balance, were probably bad repeals, but we had some people who made very strong libertarian arguments that actually those are the right things to do. So I was like, you know what, this is controversial within serious free market discussion. Let's leave those off. So anyway, tell me what I did wrong, folks. You can leave comments in the descriptions on YouTube or Rumble. I see a lot of people on Facebook saying that they can't see anybody on Facebook, which is weird because Cindy says, I see 2 viewers on Facebook, yet there's 3 people commenting from Facebook alone. So, hey, who knows? But That's the way that goes. It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's me again. Sion Rumble, by the way, says faces can express a lot when giving testimony. Seems bad to blur their faces. Yeah, I agree. That's, one of the issues we have here. But anyway, there you go. So, and ask me, by the way, if you have any questions about why something was scored a certain way. But this is all under Operation Watchdog. It's on our website. There will be more scorecards coming soon. There's going to be a gun rights scorecard. There's going to be an election integrity scorecard. Paula says, I didn't get a notification like usual. Interesting. Maybe Facebook is shadow banning us now. I don't know. But it's okay. We're going to do an email blast tomorrow and tell people about the program. They'll see it after the fact. That's okay. It's the way it goes. It's one of these midweek streams, guys. All right. Anyway, what else has been going on this week, Shane? You want to talk about Kevin McCarthy's stepping down? We saw that happening. And
yes, so that's good news. I mean, Kevin McCarthy, he was, this way was the last of the young guns. I don't know if people remember, but that was a book released, early 2010s. Who's going to be the future of the Republican Party, leading us in a new generation, new blood, fresh ideas. And it was, Kevin McCarthy, Eric Cantor, and Paul Ryan.
Yeah. I was looking for that photo.
Paul Ryan was, plucked from Wisconsin, put on the, Mitt Romney as the vice president. Oh, he's a super Tea Party guy, super free market, super conservative. And then he became the House Speaker and sold out Trump and, basically doomed a lot of the promise of President Trump's first term single-handedly. And then, Eric Cantor, he was plucked to be a House Speaker, but then he lost in a primary to Dave Bratt, a Tea Party guy, just because he was so arrogant and
he
Bratt
got cantered.
What was that?
He got cantered.
Yeah, he got cantered. So it's a term where if you're a Rhino incumbent and Tea Party guy comes out of nowhere, or America First guy comes out of nowhere to challenge him, catches lightning in a bottle, and next thing you know, boom, you're done. And then Kevin McCarthy, a lot of Republicans, a lot of conservatives. You heard when the brave reps led by Matt Gaetz went to oust Kevin McCarthy. Oh, it's the end of the world. We're going to put a Democrat in there. This is going to really hurt us, and we're not unified enough, and this is really bad tactics. Well, all those people were wrong because Kevin McCarthy, the Rhino, was thrown out. He was replaced with someone who, at least on a superficial level, is better. You can't possibly be worse. And
and most importantly, they proved there was consequences for bad behavior. Like when Cantor got knocked out, the big thing that happened that knocked Cantor out was he was whipping behind the scenes to pass Schumer Toomey Manchin gun control. What was Kevin McCarthy doing behind the scenes? Cutting deals with the Democrats on budgets and foreign aid. And the caucus got wind of it, and they were done with it. So.
Yep. So he's history, and he quit like a coward. He's gone. Yeah. He's going to go probably have a PAC or
finish his term.
Yeah, be a lobbyist or whatever. So he's out. He's history. He's disgraced, and it just shows how the Tea Party and then the Trump movement, America First, just by doing what they can to in practical ways drive the party to the right and make it more conservative and light fires underneath people and go after politicians the way that the old Republican Party never would have. It has a practical effect. It is driving things more and more to the right. And when these guys are ousted or when they retire because they're just so sick of all the toxicity and the negativity and, we can't even hold hands with the Democrats and kiss each other's asses and pass crappy bills and then talk about how great we all are and how bipartisan we all are and soak up the special interest money like I signed up for. I'm going to retire. And then when they retire, someone who's going to replace them most of the time will be a more conservative Republican. A lot of the people who joined on with Matt Gaetz to oust McCarthy were first term or second term or relatively new blood representatives. So this is a new generation. These are some new young guns, some really young guns who are changing the culture of Washington, D.C. It's not happening, in a lightning speed, but it is happening. And I think Matt Gaetz is going to be, tapped to be the next presidential hopeful, probably in 2028, or governor of Florida. He's really spectacular. Best guy in the Republican Party I've seen since Ron Paul.
Yeah,
Working on it. I'm trying to become more expressive, Cindy.
This is twice now that Gates has surprised me with making what I would have called very high risk plays that have ended up paying off. And
you got to roll the dice.
I mean, well, might have been risky, but going back though to what you're saying earlier though about Mike Johnson, because it's a very strange situation that we have right now, where Mike Johnson, on one hand, I mean, first of all, he first thing he says he wants to do after he takes the oath of office is, I want to send more of your money to Israel. And he's also now saying he wants to send more of our money to Ukraine too. But something very, and these are all very, very bad signs. Like, this is rapid signs of him changing his policies from what he was saying when he was in office. Because at first he was like very much against aid to Ukraine. And now he's saying, we can't let Putin take over Russia, as if that was what Putin's agenda even was. But it's all pitched for foreign aid. But some very, very, very strange things have been going on in just these past few days regarding the whole Ukraine thing. First off, the Republicans who are from the faction of neocon rhinos are now suddenly saying, we don't want to pass Ukraine aid unless we get border security in the package, which is very, and then we're not talking about moderates. I'm talking like Lindsey Graham and Mitt Romney are saying these things now. And this is actually like a real showdown going on. And it's so bizarre because, first of all, Lindsey Graham and Mitt Romney don't give a flying rat's ass about the border. They never have. And secondly, they've always been the top people supporting aid to Ukraine. So something fishy is going on here. And
you think it might be Mike Johnson, applying some pressure to try to have a more coherent political strategy? Because I know that, it is kind of Washington, D.C., how it works, how Ron Paul described that it worked, where, you get more welfare if you get, something domestic. That's kind of how they play ball. But at the same time, funding to stop immigration is something that Republicans should actually be doing. So are they using their leverage to get a good position? Maybe. I hope so.
Yeah, I would say, a big maybe. But first thing to keep in mind is when they talk about funding for border security, that doesn't mean building a wall. That usually means funding a lot of bureaucratic special interest programs and money for E-Verify, and which is a national ID scheme. Money for all kinds. I mean, that can include funding for everything, as far as like processing asylee applications, stuff like that. So I'm definitely not sold that the real agenda is border security. But what would make more sense is that there is a very quickly rising tide in Washington that's realizing that everything in Ukraine has really gone horribly wrong, and we got to find some kind of excuse to get out of it. There's a few major things that have been going on in Ukraine recently. One of them is there's a huge palace intrigue going on right now between President Vladimir Zelensky and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, which is not the same as the president in Ukraine the way it is in our country, General Zaluzhny. And there have been lots and lots and lots of articles about worries that Zaluzhny is planning a coup, that different forces between America and Europe are lining up behind different people. So that's one thing that's been happening. The other thing is there's a recent article, you can find this, it's been reported everywhere now, that the Pentagon just met with Zaluzhny, remember the general, and they say, what do you need to win? And he says, well, I'll need about $400 billion and 17 million artillery shells, which is, by the way, folks, a lot more artillery shells than exists on planet Earth right now. It would take us about 90 years to make that many artillery shells to give to Zaluzhny. And the interesting, I was listening to the Duran, and Alex Mercouris made this one point. He says, here's what his theory is. It's kind of a conspiracy theory, but here's what his theory is. Last spring, the U.S. asked Zaluzhny, what do you need to have a successful offensive? He says, well, basically, I need a whole brand new army. I need hundreds of tanks. I need hundreds and hundreds of mortars. I need howitzers. I need M777s. I need all the ammunition you can possibly give me. I need everything in the world. And son of a bitch, we actually gave it to him. We actually gave him everything he asked for, except the F-16s. But, and maybe the theory is what Zelensky was actually trying to do at the time was make a request so ridiculous that we would go, okay, no, this isn't going to work. But instead, the neocons are like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. We'll give you all the arms you asked for. And then they got nowhere. So this time, Zelensky says, yeah, I'll need 17 million rounds of artillery shells and $400 billion, by the way. And at that, the Pentagon's going, this guy's crazy. We don't have that kind of stuff for you. We can't possibly do this. As if,
and plus these Ukrainians, they don't have the political capital they did earlier. I mean, earlier it was crazy how much people fell into the propaganda and how much of a support there was for war over there in the United States, backing that war and making it much worse and go on much longer and have way more people die than otherwise would have. And then thinking it was peaceful. So there was tons of support among the ordinary people. I'd go canvassing door to door, and you would see Ukraine flags everywhere in just random suburbs. So it was highly disheartening, but it's waned, and now a lot of that's being diverted to the Middle East again. So I don't think anyone's really learned their lesson, but at least it's waned. It's going to be harder for them to keep this Ukraine project going much longer. And now you even see like Klitschko, the former boxer, is coming out and bashing Zelensky. So I think some of these other political figures are sensing some blood in the water. They feel like maybe I'll be the next Western-backed puppet now that Zelensky is failing and the wheels are falling off. So it's definitely coming closer and closer to an end, at least in terms of us backing it and throwing billions and billions of dollars into the black hole that is Ukraine.
Yeah, I think they really don't like where things are, but they have absolutely no plan. And it's occurred to them that maybe right now is not the best time to throw another 60, 70, 80 billion dollars, into what will be a black hole financially, when they're trying to reassess what are you going to do about China, what are you going to do about Israel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for all those things, they also have no plan. but they're thinking maybe we'll hold off on this. So you know what? If they're gonna use the excuse that we need more border security, hey, that's actually a smart play, which is very, very uncharacteristic of the Republicans, because now they can say, well, we were gonna, but gosh darn, these Democrats just do not want to stop the flow of illegals into this country. And they care more about letting illegals in than they do about supporting Ukraine. That's kind of a clever play. We'll see if they actually stick to it. But
yeah, we'll see if they have the fortitude to stick with it. But that's what they should be doing. They should be forcing the Democrats, having the Democrats play defensive, show that they don't support strong border security, which they don't. As the border crisis gets worse, the immigration issue is probably going to be the number one issue if Republicans are able to win next year, which is doubtful for many obvious reasons. But if we do win, it's probably going to be because of immigration and some sort of economic, I don't want to say collapse, but let's say recession that hits sometime over the next several months.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues that Republicans can run on. By the way, there's a cat on my lap again, so that's what, if you see my arm doing, I'm right now. She's still here, unfortunately. But anyway, there's a lot of things. Democrats have nothing to run on. Everything's falling apart everywhere. Inflation, war, recession, crime, border security, everything. There's nothing voters can point to and say, I'd like more of that, please. There's another thing happening also in Washington in just these next couple of weeks. And that, in fact, perhaps even in the next few days. And that is the reauthorization of Section 702 of FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which, for those who don't know, is a program that has been abused literally millions of times by the feds to spy on law-abiding Americans, even to charge them with crimes. And the idea is, we'll be allowed to spy on foreigners without a warrant, but if we happen to get some Americans communications in the process, oh, well, we happen to use those anyway. And there have been hearings all year about this, and tons and tons of the FBI people coming in and saying, oh gosh, sorry, Senator, we didn't know we were doing this, and we still need to have these essential tools, but we'll promise we'll do better next time. Which you've heard the song and dance over and over and over and over again. But the amazing thing is, this section is going to just expire this year unless they renew it. So Congress, if they want to maintain the status quo, have to actually act. And what's happening right now is there's two versions in the House of what would be a reauthorization. One is coming out of the Judiciary Committee. They did markups today. It was introduced by Andy Biggs, who is a hardcore Freedom Caucus member with lots of reforms, warrant requirement, all kinds of good stuff. That just got marked up today. I haven't had a chance to take a look at what came out of the Judiciary Committee. But then there's going to be a competing bill coming out of the Intelligence Committee tomorrow. And without any question, this is the bill the deep state's going to want. It's going to have no real meaningful reforms. Even some of the other bills I've seen over the past few months on FISA reauthorization have had bad flaws. Like I think even Jim Jordan had one that was going to remove a warrant requirement except in case of emergency, whatever that could mean. Things like that. So we'll see. But I think probably the best thing to push for with all these lawmakers is just vote no. We don't need to have the government's proven they've proved they can't be trusted with this stuff because they abuse the power over and over and over and over and over again, constantly. So,
yeah, and this is why another argument for making the system as ugly as possible and as dysfunctional as possible. Yeah. It's going to make it so there's less likely that these Democrats and Republicans will want to get together and then strike some sort of deal or compromise. They love doing the fake reform, the very small, slight change in the law that's supposedly going to bring transparency and accountability, but in actuality does nothing. Though that's the kind of thing that the system, the uniparty wants to pass. But the more these people are butting heads, the more angry they're getting, the more animus there is between them. These sort of things might fizzle out. They won't be able to pass a reauthorization of this intolerable act. So that's another reason why we should be pushing for gridlock and politicians in Washington, D.C. at each other's throats. I always need to reject that false narrative of we at least need people coming together. Our politicians need to come together and find solutions and stop all this, ridiculousness. No, we need more dysfunction in Washington, D.C. The less things that they do, the more they're gridlocked, the more they're at each other's throats, the more they're fighting with each other, the less they'll have time to unite to screw us all.
Yeah. Some chats on this. Jay says, is FISA reauthorization the kind of thing that will get unanimous Democrat support? Yes and no. There are some Democrats who are voicing a lot of concerns about this issue. In particular, Zoe Lofgren is one of them.
The squad, maybe? I would expect the squad types.
Amelia Jayapal has been someone who's been vocally calling for FISA reforms. The issue is when they come to the floor for a vote, this is when they often flip, or just enough of them will flip to get it through, and the rest will vote no, but it won't matter because they got this all worked out. So there are some Democrats who seem to care about civil liberties, but whether or not they really do is always an open question. And then also, Me Against I says, isn't there an extension of 702 until April in some bill? I believe there's a 30-day extension in the NDAA. But that's not kicking it down the can. That's not kicking the can very far. It's only 30 days. And the NDAA hasn't passed either. That might not be a get done automatically, Billy. That was something we were looking at this and thinking they may have to pass the NDAA by the end of the year, but they might not because the CR might cover military spending for just a little bit farther too. So we shall see. But nevertheless, the 30-day extension is not going to mean this issue is dead. It's going to mean just postpone another 30 days. But I mean, it's such BS. The way that you see a lot of articles in the media talking about the 702 and saying, oh, and it's an emergency now because it's going to expire if it's not done by the end of the year. They've known for 4 years it was going to expire at the end of this year. And it's not that they haven't been working on it. It's that they haven't gotten the votes to get it reauthorized and passed yet. And that's what needs to be kept that way. Then Dennis Marburger on Rumble says 10th Amendment centers turn it off campaign in Utah to cut the water supply to the NSA data center in Bluffton, Utah was a novel approach to fight government spying on us. That's interesting. And he also says Ron Wyden has been good on FISA and government spying. I stand by my previous remarks. Some of them will say the right things and even do the right things when their vote won't matter. But when it does matter, that's when we'll see. So we'll see what happens when there's an actual vote. Some other things going on in Washington. Our good friend Thomas Massie has been coming under fire recently. One of the strongest freedom supporters in Washington. And of course, Massie is from the same state as Rand Paul himself. He's done a lot of programs recently. In fact, he was on Tucker's show, I think just 2 nights ago, and Glenn Greenwald's show last night. And the Defamation League is coming after him, which they call themselves the Anti-Defamation League. No, they are the Defamation League. And they are angry because he is voting no on foreign aid to Israel, because he votes no on all foreign aid. And for those who don't know, the Defamation League, well, here, let me play this clip for you. This is from quite some time ago. This is a former Mossad agent. This is the version of the CIA, the external spy division. Here, this is a guy who wrote a book actually quite a long time ago. It was an old clip. Here, I'll just play it and I'll show you.
Now, I know what they do because I used to ask them to do it. I mean, when I was in the Mossad, and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like Pete talked once and said, Israel is bombing Lebanon with cluster bombs. We say, hey, who's that guy? You know? Pete McCarthy, we used to call him. Yeah, which is Pete the cockroach. Because he makes a lot of noise and you can't get rid of him. So what you do is you get in touch with a guy in the station in New York or in the station in Washington. You say, tell the guys at B'nai B'rith to label him. And of course the campaign starts, and before you know it, the guy's labeled. And he's an anti-Semite. Because that's what we say he is. And that's one stain you cannot wash. Now, it shames me as a Jew to tell you that. But that's the fact. And it's wrong.
So that was Victor Ostrovsky, former Mossad agent. The guy he was talking about is a former Congressman, Pete McCloskey from California. Who you can look him up, but he was involved in a number of. Well, first of all, he ran for U.S. Senate. He was involved in some presidential campaigns, and he was basically just labeled by the ADL, the Defamation League, and he mentioned in that clip, he said, Mossad will talk to the guys at B'nai B'rith. B'nai B'rith was the organization from which the ADL came out of. That was it used to be a part of B'nai B'rith, then they became separate. He says, yeah, what we do is just go around and call the guy anti-Semitic. And that's how he destroys reputation. So he voted, Thomas Massie he was the only Republican, and I think one of like 10 Democrats who voted no, on a resolution to declare anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which is a remarkable thing for Congress to declare because, first of all, since when is Congress in the business of dictating the truth to the American people? Period. I mean, stop right there. And secondly, Zionism is a political opinion, and you may have one opinion on that or the other. It doesn't matter. That's not the same as Jew hatred. You know?
Yeah, and they're moving closer and closer.
Hey, Shane, I can't hear you for some reason.
You can't hear me?
That might be me. Hey, folks in the chat, if you can hear Shane, let me know.
Can you hear me?
Because I can't hear him, but that might be a problem on my end. Someone in the chat says, actually, he can hear Shane fine. Oh, lovely. I'm having this problem again. All right, Shane, you filibuster. I will try to figure out what's going on with my headset.
All right, here we go again. Anyway, yeah. So as I was saying, it's a slippery slope toward actually criminalizing speech. We may not like if someone has to, expresses an opinion that is pro-Palestine or something to that effect. But that is protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution. People should not be punished for having that opinion or canceled for expressing that opinion more so than they would be if they expressed a conservative opinion. So to see conservatives support the sort of free speech violations and the cancellations and the cancel culture against people who are pro-Palestinian, it just shows how little consistency there is and how they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're supporting a precedent that not just will be used against them in the future, but already is being used against them. And they're normalizing the idea of criminalizing free speech and freedom of expression. Now, you can, of course, lobby your congressman, there's been pro-Stand With Israel rallies and people rallying behind Israel. But to actually criminalize the opposition, call them terrorists, call them anti-Semites, that's exactly what the regime, the Biden regime, and the globalists are doing to Trump supporters. And now conservatives are falling into that trap and supporting that sort of behavior and normalizing it. And it's very shameful.
Yeah, I mean, the dangerous thing is that this is how you lose the moral high ground. Because once you start saying, okay, well, we are very, very concerned that people are losing their jobs, their careers, even their children over protesting lockdowns, protesting radical literature being distributed in schools, protesting transgenderism. And then they say, well, we got to shut down these pro-Hamas demonstrations. In fact, here's Betty right there says, pro-Hamas is where I draw the line. Well, that's the problem is then they say, well, okay, so really, you didn't actually care about free speech. You just didn't want the speech you like being attacked. Because it's speech. It's an opinion. And if you can't defend the speech you don't like, the only speech that's ever in jeopardy is the speech that's unpopular, the speech that's against the establishment. And by the way, let me just say also on these issues, it should give you pause when your opinion on an issue just happens to be the popular opinion in Washington. Because, if you find yourself agreeing with Joe Biden on something, you might want to think twice. Because
if you look at, the First Amendment and how it's been used and what it was written to do, you've seen throughout times many objectionable rallies, Klan rallies, American Nazi Party rallies, far left communist rallies, all these sort of things, these radical ideologies that you can argue are, inherently violent or wrong or evil. But under the First Amendment, they are able to, express their point of view and their opinion publicly because that is why it was written. It was written to support political speech. It wasn't written. It's been perverted. It wasn't written to so perverts could show porno to kids in schools. That wasn't why the founding fathers wrote it. They wrote it so that people could express a political point of view without any sort of pushback from the government. I would argue that other forms of pushback are wrong too, like social media censoring or canceling people, or losing your employment for expressing your political opinion under the First Amendment. I think all that's wrong, and it has a overall chilling effect on free speech. We should encourage people to express themselves honestly more often, rather than having people shuttered and forced to feeling like they have to muzzle themselves rather than express themselves. That's, I think, a bigger problem than so-called hate speech being disseminated.
Yeah, and the other thing too I would add is there's a certain nobility in being the target and the victim of censorship. I mean, that's not to say that it's not a setback. When you're being deplatformed and the government's saying you can't express your views as someone who questions vaccines and things of that nature. But there is a certain segment that will say, and I count myself proudly in this segment, is when the government tells me I shouldn't listen to somebody, I want to hear them, period. As soon as the government says, you can't listen to this, or the news media says, it's in our best judgment that you not hear this, then I want to hear it. I want to read it. So you have to keep in mind when you say, I don't want people to be allowed to demonstrate in support of, Betty says Hamas, but people are conflating all of the Palestinian population as members of Hamas. But even if you say Hamas, We don't want you to be allowed to support Hamas. Why not? Now I want to start looking in to see, okay, what's the other side of this story? Because when the government's telling me, and people are telling me, you aren't allowed to hear an opinion, I want to hear what that person has to say. So Betty says, I believe, and I'm going to give her, the floor to respond. I believe supporting the sovereignty of my country comes first. Don't get it twisted. I didn't say you didn't, but I'm glad to hear that. They threaten my country, you lose the free speech right. Well, but if you give it away anyway, then there's nothing left to defend. I mean, and did they, by the way, did Hamas threaten our country? Did they stage an insurrection? I mean, this is the other thing too. This goes to the cheapening of the rhetoric. I've seen a lot of people doing this in the last few days, in the last few weeks. There's a demonstration in Washington pro-Palestine. This is an insurrection. Let's lock them up. No, folks, two wrongs don't make a right. And when you say that, I know what you're trying to express is that there be a call for fairness and equal protection under the law, but that's because the January 6 people should be given their rights back and given restitution for their infringement. Not to say, fight fire with fire, let's lock up the Democrats who are doing something because it's an insurrection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We lose our moral high ground doing these things and saying these things. We really do.
Yeah, and you got to look at the broader context. You got to look at the broader context too of, look at what's been going on in the Middle East. The United States they've been occupying different countries in the Middle East. They have their bases there. They've been arming different countries. They've been overthrowing elected governments. They've been given billions and billions of dollars in foreign military aid to the state of Israel, who then takes that aid and then uses it to bomb, in certain cases, Palestinians. So that's why there's so much enmity, why there's so much anger against the United States in the Middle East. Most Americans have no idea of what their country has done in the Middle East. They have no clue. They've been kept in the dark. It's been done by the CIA. It's been done in the cover of darkness. So that is what has happened. That's why there, is so much rage. That's why they say death to America. And the only answer is it's not to pour more resources and money and weapons and whatever else and more clandestine operations in the Middle East. No, it's bring the troops home. Let's focus on, shoring up, the multitude of problems in our decaying country rather than going abroad and getting involved in these different military adventures that cause unforeseen circumstances. It causes blowback against us and ends up hurting us more in the long run. The only people it really benefits are defense contractors and the war party and the military industrial complex. So these groups like Hamas are bad, but we are sending people into their arms and throwing fuel on their fire by our foreign policy, and let there be less people radicalized to join groups like Hamas if we weren't dumping so much money and weapons and doing other crazy stuff out there.
Yeah, and let's be clear about this too, because Betty responded by saying Hamas doesn't have constitutional rights. Hamas is a group that's in Gaza. They're not in the United States, and this is what I find upsetting is I see people everywhere saying American citizens in colleges, American Jewish people who are opposed to what's going on in what Israel is doing right now in Gaza. They're all Hamas. It's a Hamas rally. No, it's not. It's a rally of, it might be some illegals there, but by and large, it's a rally of people that are Americans that have constitutional rights themselves. Dennis says, on Rumble says, those attacking our free speech and other rights are the ones threatening America. The bigger danger is from the savages in the business suits in D.C., not foreigners. Yeah, that's the other thing too, folks. Remember, the big enemy out there is not the people who are, launching homemade rockets in faraway lands. It's the people that control our country, the people who are in control of the legal system, the people who are rigging the elections. The more that we're focusing on foreign enemies that Washington wants us to be focusing on, the more we're forgetting, what the real problems are. And the real problems are the political establishment in this country that has occupied both parties. Anyway, let's move on from this unpleasant topic. What else is in the news? A A new challenger has entered the U.S. Senate race in Michigan. Sandy Pensler informed me by text message. I guess he must have sent out a big text blast that he is now running for U.S. Senate. He is the 6th, 7th, 8th. I've lost track. Candidate in the U.S. Senate race. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Sandy Pensler, Shane?
I know he ran against John James.
Yeah.
I think like maybe 5-6 years ago now. It's been a while.
Yeah, it was either 4 years or 6 years ago. I don't remember which.
Yeah, he ran against John James, and I thought he was better. I was never a big fan of John James, and
no,
neither
was I.
Yeah, so we've got to learn that we were correct in that way. So I supported Sandy back then. Unfortunately, I lost to John James. But we'll see what he has to offer, what his policies are. I mean, I think at the very least, what you can say about him is that he's at least better than Peter Meyer and Mike Rogers. So he's not the worst candidate in the field.
That's not saying much, but I would say more than that, because I remember he did run a constitutionalist campaign. In fact, I attended a fundraiser for Senator Rand Paul at his house a few years ago. He is a big supporter of the Liberty Movement. He might not be the only supporter of the Liberty Movement in the U.S. Senate race in Michigan. He might be the only one, though, that will be financially competitive, but we shall see. As you mentioned, Peter Meyer, I will never vote for. If he's a nominee, not in a million years will I vote for Peter Meyer. I've resumed my boycott of Meyer stores, and I know he doesn't own them. I know it's his uncle, but I don't care, because the more I can damage his family by helping boycott Meyer, I will. That is a man who organized and participated in a Democrat coup against President Trump. Full stop. He voted for a sham impeachment. He is absolutely unfit to run for U.S. Senate. I will never support him, no matter how far he gets. Ditto for Mike Rogers, by the way, who is the National Republican Senatorial Committee's candidate. I got an email from someone the other day, out of the blue, who was asking me. She's a local person who was got our info about the Washtenaw GOP, and she's like, I got this thing in the mail, this Washtenaw area Republican survey. What is this? And then she sent me a picture. It was the NRSC doing one of those survey fundraising mailers where they hope you'll fill it all out and then include a donation to make your voice more powerful. The NRSC is a stupid fundraising device. NRSC always backs rhinos, and they're backing Mike Rogers in this race, who was one of the typical, classical deep state supporters in the House. He was the chair of the Intelligence Committee, the same House Intelligence Committee that's giving us problems with the Section 702 stuff right now. Mike Rogers supported all that crap. He supported the Patriot Act, supported the USA Freedom Act. These are all surveillance acts. Supported the Iraq War, supported all the foreign wars. Total neocon to the bone is Mike Rogers, and I wish him the worst. Of the remaining candidates, you have James Craig, who, let's not forget, supported the lockdowns and was giving out tickets left and right for people that weren't obeying the mask dictates from Whitmer. I might get over that.
He was the chief in place when TCF happened. He was the head of keeping the people out of TCF to see what was actually going on during the alleged fraud that happened.
Yeah. I might be able to get over that compared with Mike Rogers and Peter Meyer. But luckily now I might not have to, because Paula says there's 9 Michigan U.S. Senator candidates. I don't know how many of them are going to be financially competitive at all. I have met Michael Hoover, who seems like a solid candidate for sure. I looked up his fundraising numbers, and as of, I want to say, September was the last fundraising reporting deadline. He had raised just under $250,000, which is honestly not all that impressive for a U.S. Senate candidate, to tell you guys. And Nikki Snyder, who has, I think, been running for longer, has only raised $164,000 as of that same time period. Also pretty lackluster. And then the others are, they've turned in no numbers yet. Sherry O'Donnell, I guess she's a good conservative Christian type, but she ran against Tim Walberg for Congress in the last cycle and didn't make it. So why run for a higher office if you couldn't win the lower office? And the others, what is it? 3, 4, 5 of them, Paula, I don't know. I can't even think of who they are. So actually, that's not true. I know one other one. What's his name? Fulsheo. I forget his last name, but he's an African immigrant who is still has a very thick accent and wants to run for U.S. Senate. somehow don't think he's going to be financially competitive.
He's
But
the American. He's the dark horse. He's the American dream. I support him. I support Falchetto or whatever else.
I hope he gets on the ballot, but we'll see. But Sandy Pensler did get on the ballot, and Sandy Pensler is a man of means. So we may actually have a good candidate in that race yet. But it depends. I mean, we'll see how much of his money will he be willing to put into this race. These are questions we just don't know yet. Oh, you want to talk about Dana Nessel has been, well, there's articles. Is it right to say she's been impeached if the articles haven't been voted out? I don't think it is. I think she's had articles of impeachment written against her.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, she is. The impeachment process has begun. Let's say it that way.
Has begun. I think it's probably not get too much farther with the Democrats in power, but just calling it as I see it.
Representative Jim DeSena, Freedom Caucus member, board member of the Grand New Party PAC, introduced the measure to impeach Dana Nessel over her refusal to address election fraud and her malicious prosecution of the Trump electors. So those are the two, I believe, the two impeachable offenses listed in the resolution, and he's put that forward. I did a petition with Rescue Michigan that's been signed, I think, several hundred times so that people can get on the horn and talk to their lawmakers and encourage them to support it. Only 9 Republicans signed their name onto the resolution. And as you said, that it's very, very, very not likely it's going to pass in this current system with the Democrats in power. Even if gridlock, it's going to change in a minute. So that's going to not be approved. But at the same time, every Republican name should be on here. Did Democrats care when they didn't have the numbers to impeach President Trump, that they knew it was going to die? No, they pushed it forward anyway, even though they knew it would be quashed in the Senate. Just to tar President Trump with that image of having been impeached or is under investigation or here are his crimes. So they're always out on the offense, exposing what they feel is the truth about their opposition. So why aren't our lawmakers doing the same? Why aren't they out there saying what Dana Nessel is doing is abysmal? It's so wrong. It's unprecedented. It's Soviet style. She's going after a political opposition. Why aren't they standing for the rights of their own constituents, the ones who did the right thing and refused to go along with the sham in 2020 and obeyed their conscience and were great Americans, made the founding fathers proud? Well, these Republicans would rather go along to get along. They'd rather sit on their hands. They'd rather go behind closed doors and cut deals with Democrats. That's why they're not putting their name on the impeachment resolution. So the Grand New Party PAC, that's going to be one of our signature issues for when we send out mailers to candidates with trying to vet them with survey questions. That's going to be one of the main key issues is, do you support impeachment of Dana Nessel? Will you get on board for this? Because if you're not willing to use that power, then what's the point? What's the purpose? Are you just going to be 70% of what the Democrats would do? That's the sort of Republican leadership that had put us in such a dismal position that made the grassroots so enraged and paranoid about their leaders and why we're in this current awful situation we're in. So we need better leadership, and we need these sort of things. We need our lawmakers educating the public, talking about how this is why Dana Nessel is such a tyrant, why she is so wrong. These things can't get normalized. We have to be out there fighting back against it. But only 9 Republicans, I believe, signed on to it. The other 30 or 40 or so, they don't want anything to do with it. And they'll make the excuse of, well, it wouldn't pass anyway. But even if they had the majority, they still wouldn't do it because they want to go along to get along. They want to have bipartisan achievements with the Democrats, and that's still the majority of the Republican caucus in Lansing, sadly.
Yeah. Real quick, Paula says these are the 9 candidates for U.S. Senate. I've never heard of J.D. Wilson. I've heard of Alexandria Taylor only for people showing me that she's been a lifelong Democrat and a nutcase. And I think we talked about all the others. So there you go. I did pull up the resolution. I actually only see 8 people on here, but
It might be 8. I might have gotten that wrong. I
Yeah,
gave the
DeSantis.
Republicans too much credit. My bad.
Yeah. DeSantis, Frisky, Fox, Smith, Maddox, Kakara, Regas, and Shriver. So here it is. Just blah, blah, blah. Failed to charge individuals responsible for submitting clearly fraudulent voter registration applications, while some sense of bringing felony charges against individuals to who she has indicated do not have the requisite specific intent to have committed the crime's charges. She has also improperly inquired about an investigation into a member of her transition team, having at least the appearance of impropriety. Well, I definitely see. Here's what I think. Article 1 is saying she has failed to prosecute somebody, and that's a tough argument to make because there's every reason in the world a prosecutor can just say, "Oh, I don't think I could get a conviction. I can't waste the taxpayers' money." Blah 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 blah. The stronger argument is, and that's not to dismiss all this stuff and all the facts behind it, but that's a tough argument to make. This one is rock solid. This should be the first article. That's where you have absolute, crystal clear proof of malice. And that's what I think really every article of impeachment, I've criticized some of the ones that came out a couple of years ago against Whitmer, and I think others as well, was you have to show malice. That's so critical, is that it's not just that she's choosing not to prosecute this person, but she is prosecuting this person. The fact that she has openly said, I mean, that is grounds for dismissal, that she does not think these people could be charged because she says they believe they're innocent, which they clearly do. That should have been charge number 1. And I'm not going to say that that makes these not worth supporting. But I would say I think that was the thing to zoom in on right there. What's this other one? Alleged as this is related to conflict of interest. Yeah, this is one that, well, there may be more. I mean, the bottom line is, unfortunately, that's the kind of thing that you'd want to have an investigation to determine more into, an inquiry, which we're not going to get. But nonetheless, as you say, 8 Republicans put their names down. All the rest of them did not. And I don't know what kind of scraps they think they're going to get from the Democrats. That's been the theme all year long. Why the Republicans are voting with the Democrats on some of the worst bills is because they want to get those PAs. And by the way, just to tie this all together, put a nice bow on it. If we go to the Rescue Michigan website, hold on, bring that back up here. That new recent laws tab. I should have added a thing that shows the sponsors of these bills, because I'll tell you what, folks, a lot of these are, in fact, I will do that. But if we look at just the most recent things in Lansing, this page, I believe, does have them. Rats, it doesn't. A lot of these are Republican bills. A lot of these are Republican bills. So, and of course, the ones that are not, they're not important things. They're going to be the things that are like tweaked definition of TSA area in an airport, possibly, things of that nature. So, anyway.
Actually, I have an interesting anecdote. I was at, just a couple nights ago, I had a meeting with a group of people, and I was kind of on a panel of sorts with Representative Mark Tisdale, the Republican of Rochester Hills area. He has voted, in favor of gun control, in favor of the budget.
Oh, he's the worst.
Yeah, and some other things. And to his credit, every rationale he had, seemed to make sense. It was logical. Well, this bill only does that. So as they explained it to me, and I thought that was fair, so I supported it. The budget, it had this important money as a vacant lot, and it's going to be turned into a tech center, and all these jobs, and all this investment.
So he's going to be a politician, basically.
Yeah. So, all these, rationales, quaint rationales that sounded good. And I have no reason to doubt that he wasn't being sincere. I made the point that, this is, how the system works. This is the evil of the system at its core, is that, you will, they'll dangle that money in front of you to get you to jump through the hoops, get that bipartisan support.
That's what he should have said. Is, I got money from
things.
Lobbyists to vote for these things. and really, I mean, that's the problem with all these bills is like, and I'll just to show you some of these things, like I'll go back to the PA scorecard for a second here. And let me just pick up anybody like, oh, let's pick Tisdale. Let's see what things Tisdale voted for. Yep, occupational licensure. I'm sure he's got a great explanation for Juneteenth, making it so the taxpayers pay for state employees to get an additional paid vacation day. I'm sure he had a great explanation for why the ORV fees, well, those go to maintain trails. So that's actually a good government fee. Yeah, except that good government fee takes away that's also a pressure release valve that allows them to charge more taxes for everything else that they're spending money on. Oh, his hardcore opposition to the Second Amendment, depriving people of their right to self-defense because they're convicted of. By the way, when it says misdemeanor domestic violence, it includes way, way, way more than just domestic violence for what this actually falls into.
Well, he said if you plea it down, a lot of these people have felonies, they plea it down to misdemeanors, and if they plea it down, then they shouldn't, they shouldn't have guns too, because they were charged with felony domestic violence. That was his rationale for voting for it.
Disgraceful. Yeah, I mean that what you do there is you take away prosecutorial discretion, which there was a Republican bill to do, by the way, to say you can't offer a plea bargain for a misdemeanor for a felony gun charge. That is a Republican bill. But no, he just votes for the bills the Democrats allow him to vote for. Some kind of special interest subsidy. We talked about this one already. I'm sure he's got lots of arguments for all these things. Private health insurance doesn't offer minimum coverage. Guess what, folks? If you tell insurance companies this kind of coverage that you want to offer is now illegal, you're going to have more people that are uninsured because they are not going to be able to afford the more expensive insurance. Same for all this other stuff, by the way, too. Mandate insurance. Every time you say mandate an insurance company do X, Y, and Z, is going to come to you and say, Mark Tisdale will say, well, because there was a problem with this insurance company where so-and-so was able to not get the coverage that they needed. It's like, well, if you don't understand basic economics, you don't understand that when you impose a mandate on a company, they cut off the flow of the goods and services because you've broken the supply and demand where those two curves meet. You've now chopped that off. So now you'll have more expensive insurance for everybody else, and you'll have less insured people because some people won't be able to make up that gap. I'm sure he had a great explanation for his vote to ban insurers from discriminating based on sexual orientation and gender identity, because there's no evidence whatsoever that, transgender people have higher rates of medical issues or anything like that, or higher rates of litigation, let's say. Yeah. I'm sure he's got all kinds of great explanations for all of these votes of his. I'm sure this corporate welfare subsidy, he's got the same great explanation I've heard for every other corporate welfare subsidy out there. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Folks, every time a politician tells you anything, you have to ask yourself how it benefits them if you believe them. Because they're good at BSing. They're good. When the lobbyists come to them, they give them the talking points. That's why he's good at them, because he's memorized them. That's all. So, you know what? You take my scorecard to your voters, or make up your own scorecard if you like. You can do that on our website, and let him explain it to all the voters you hand it out to.
The thing that I explained was, you vote in favor of gun control or something relatively minor. That's giving the left an inch. You give them an inch, they take a mile. Every little thing that they pass, every small, narrow gun control measure or anything else, that's one step on the road to full gun confiscation and evisceration of the Second Amendment. They use these smaller achievements as a springboard to achieve those larger goals. So when Republicans feed into that, even if it might sound halfway reasonable on a particular issue, when they feed into that, safe storage was another one that that Tisdale voted for. And he said, "Oh, well, it's only if a child happens to get their hands on one of your guns that you're going to be charged under these laws." So, and it's makes it sound reasonable. Who wants kids having access to guns willy-nilly around? That should be a felony or whatever. But it's just one more infringement down the road, down the path to all of our liberties being torn up. So that's how it works, is that Republicans will capitulate. They will listen to the lobbyists, listen to the special interests, listen to the Democrats, repeat that rationale in their heads, knowing that they're going to get more campaign funds by going with the flow rather than standing with principle. Then they're ultimately enabling the destruction of our country piece by piece by piece.
Yeah, and by the way, there already are criminal liability laws. He's just calling for extra special liability laws to punish gun owners extra specially. It's me again, Sai says, every time Tisdale votes badly, I tell my friend who lives in his district. Good for you. Betty Nelson says, good night, past my bedtime twice this week. Prayers for our state and our country. Thanks for everything you guys do. Thank you, Betty, for tuning in. And to everybody else, I think we'll probably call it a stream there. I think I covered all of the topics I want to get through tonight. I'm sure we'll have more on Sunday, maybe some debate footage. And there's something else. Tony says Nikki Snyder's new video is good. Way to get noticed. I have not yet watched it. I'm almost afraid of how cringy it would be, but I haven't seen it, so that's not fair to say. But just politicians making music videos does not usually go well. I'll have to take your word for it, Tony. But if it's good, maybe we'll watch it on Sunday's show. I don't know. We'll see. All right, guys. That's going to do it for us tonight. As always, thanks for all you do for liberty. Till next